Have you ever stood in front of a painting, maybe in like a quiet gallery, or even just looking at a really high resolution image on your screen, and you suddenly got this distinct kind of unnerving feeling?
Oh, where it feels like the artwork is actually reading your mind?
Yes, exactly. Like it's reading you rather than the other way around. It
Yeah.
completely flips the script on you.
Right, because you go in expecting to just, passively observe something on a wall.
Yeah, and instead, the canvas just reaches out and demands introspection. I mean, it's wild. And that is exactly the kind of visual and psychological territory we are venturing into today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks. I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. Because today, our mission is entirely focused on one single, incredibly striking piece of visual art. We are looking at Anupam Gupta painting, The Chromatic Soul of the Devi.
And it's a piece that absolutely warrants a rigorous visual dissection, to be honest.
Oh, for sure.
Because what we're looking at here is essentially a masterclass in visual storytelling and, well, spiritual symbolism.
Art.
The artist is basically manipulating color and form to completely bypass our logical brain and tap directly into our psychological state.
Okay, let's unpack this visual impact, starting with the most visceral punch the painting throws at you. Because the moment your eyes hit this canvas, you are confronted with a profound sense of division.
Yes, the bisection. It's immediate.
It really is. The face of the Devi is split right down the middle, and the color palette on either side is just wildly asymmetrical.
Mhm.
On the left side of her face, she is draped in this deep, shadowy, really rich blue, and it's set against a background of vibrant greens and darker blues.
Yeah, it feels incredibly heavy.
Heavy, yes, but also in a very vast, almost expanding way, you know?
Right, and that vastness is entirely by design. What's fascinating here is the mechanics of how the artist is utilizing color theory to communicate deep spiritual theology.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, the deep shadowy blue on the left, it represents cosmic infinity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Historically, artists across various Eastern traditions have faced this unique problem, right? Like, how do you paint the boundless?
How do you paint something that has no edges?
Exactly. How do you paint the absolute depth of the divine that literally cannot be measured?
Yeah.
And blue became the mechanism for that.
Because it looks like the sky.
Yes, the sky or the ocean.
Okay.
By layering these cool, really dark pigments, the eye cannot easily find a focal point. It creates a visual illusion of infinite space, like staring into the deepest part of the night sky. It creates a full void.
Right, and the temperature of the painting completely changes the second you cross the midline to the right side of her face.
Oh, it's a total shock to the system.
It really is. It glows. I mean, it's painted in these warm, earthy reds and terracottas, and the background behind that side of her head is radiating this bright yellow and like pinkish white light.
It looks almost like a sunrise breaking right behind her.
Yeah, exactly. So what are we looking at on this side?
On this side, we're looking at a classic representation of Shakti.
Okay, Shakti.
Right, which is that raw, burning, dynamic, feminine energy, the creative force of the universe.
In placing that dynamic energy directly against the infinite blue, I mean, it creates an intense visual friction.
Friction is the perfect word for it, because if the blue is the silent, formless space, the red of Shakti is the motion. It's the life force, the heat that actually generates the universe within that space.
And just on a purely visual level, when you place a cool receding color like that deep blue immediately next to a warm advancing color like terracotta red, the human eye just like struggles to resolve the depth.
Yeah, it totally messes with your perception.
The red wants to jump out at you and the blue wants to pull you in. It sets up a really fascinating duality.
It does.
It makes me think of thermal dynamics, or even like the positive and negative terminals of a battery.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
You have these two totally different polarities, right?
Yeah.
The cold, boundless vacuum on one side and the burning forge of creation on the other. But looking at the canvas, they don't seem to be at war.
No, they're not fighting each other.
Right. It's not a battle between warm and cool. It's a circuit. You absolutely need both the vacuum and the forge to generate the power of the Devi. She is the living circuit where infinity and creation meet.
A circuit is a very precise way to look at it, especially when you consider that a circuit requires an anchor to manage that immense flow of energy without just, burning out.
Burning out or short-circuiting, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the structural architecture of the face itself, because you have these two massive, opposing cosmic forces sharing a single face. There's a tremendous amount of structural tension on the canvas.
Honestly, visually, it feels like the painting should just split in half and fly apart.
Right, it begs the question of what keeps the Devi intact.
And the answer is right in the center of the canvas.
Yes, it is.
If we trace our eyes inward from that deep blue and the radiant red, we hit the midline. And there are three distinct features here that act like, well, like gravitational anchors. Right between her eyebrows, there is a perfectly centered, bright red bindi. Just below that, resting on her nostril, is this intricate gold nose ring shaped like a sun. And then there is the line connecting them.
Ah, the white line running down the bridge of the nose. I would argue this is perhaps the most critical structural element of the entire composition.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because looking closely at the technique, that line is almost jarring.
It really stands out.
It does. Running from the bindi down to the tip of the nose is this incredibly stark, thick, solid block of white. And I mean a rigid block.
Yeah, it's not subtle at all.
Not even a little. A skilled painter like Muchu could have easily, blended that white smoothly into the blue and the red. He could have created a realistic anatomical nose, utilizing gradients to imply lighting.
Easily.
But instead, it's this intentionally disruptive, unblended pillar of paint. It completely refuses to integrate with the surrounding colors. Why do that?
Well, it refuses to integrate because it isn't anatomy. It's geometry and symbolism.
Okay.
If you look at that white line expecting to see cartilage and bone, the painting just won't make sense to you. That stark, unblended block of white represents the central path of consciousness.
The central path of consciousness.
Right. Mechanically, within the logic of the painting, consciousness itself must remain distinct from both the void and the chaos.
Yeah.
It cannot blend. It stands apart, it holds the center, and it observes.
Wow. Okay, that makes perfect sense from an architectural standpoint. It actually reminds me of a keystone in a masonry arch.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Yeah, because a keystone doesn't blend into the surrounding stones, right? It's a distinct, rigid, wedge-shaped block that gets dropped right into the top center.
And its sheer rigidity is what locks the opposing sides of the arch together.
Exactly. It stops the whole thing from collapsing. So the white line is the spiritual keystone holding the blue void and the red creation together.
Spot on. And consider the two elements that this keystone connects. It starts at the bindi, which signifies the third eye.
Which is like the seat of spiritual awakening.
It's exactly. Spiritual awakening, inner vision, and the ability to see beyond physical duality.
And then it runs straight down to the nose ring, which is shaped like a sun.
Right, which embodies solar, life-giving, sustaining energy in the material world.
Oh, I see.
So this central path of consciousness, this bold white line, is the conduit. It is actively bridging the highest level of spiritual enlightenment with grounded, actionable, life-giving energy. It's the axis mundi of the painting.
So it's not an anatomical quirk at all. It actually forces your central vision to lock onto that white pillar.
Yes.
Your peripheral vision is left to deal with the overwhelming blue and red, but your central focus is forced to remain stable on that path of consciousness. It's incredibly clever.
It really is. And that forced stability in the center of the face becomes absolutely crucial when we direct our attention to the lower half of the artwork.
Oh, yeah. Because once we recognize that her face is this perfectly balanced junction of cosmic forces, we are entirely unprepared for what is happening just below the neck.
The visual rules we just spent time establishing completely fall apart.
They really do. The face of the Devi, despite holding all this cosmic tension we just talked about, is remarkably serene.
Very peaceful.
Yeah. Her eyes, which are painted in this, haunting pinkish red, they're looking steadily forward. There's no stress in the jaw, no furrow in the brow.
But then you look below the neck.
Yeah, cascading down the left side like wild hair or, I don't know, a tangled scarf. The canvas erupts into absolute chaos.
We shift abruptly from calculated geometry to a frenzy of raw energy lines.
It's just thick, overlapping, squiggly brush strokes. You have these aggressive slits and slashes of stark white, bright red, deep blue, and yellow.
It's very intense.
It looks like a visualization of static electricity or like a tangled web of raw nerves. It's messy and vibrant. Honestly, it feels like the eye of a hurricane.
I think that's the perfect way to describe it.
You have this terrifying, swirling, destructive storm wall of brushstrokes, and right in the center, this pocket of utter low-pressure stillness where the Devi's face resides.
And pulling on that hurricane analogy reveals the core thesis of the piece, really. Because the eye of a hurricane doesn't exist independently of the storm.
Right. It exists as a direct result of it.
Exactly. The surrounding atmospheric chaos is what creates that localized stillness. In the same vein, these chaotic, squiggly lines at the bottom represent the material world.
The messiness of life.
Yes. They represent the day-to-day frenzy of existence, the unpredictable nature of reality.
Which means her serenity isn't born of ignorance. Like, she isn't peaceful because she has retreated from the messy reality of the universe.
Not at all. Rather, the divine consciousness remains steady precisely while being rooted in that chaotic energy.
Oh.
The painting is delivering a profound mechanism for understanding spiritual serenity. It argues that true stillness is not the absence of chaos.
It's not retreating to a pristine mountaintop where the brushstrokes of life are perfectly smooth and blended.
Right. It is mastery over the chaos.
It's about letting those overlapping, stressful, erratic lines of life swirl around your neck, while your central path of consciousness, that rigid white keystone, remains unmoving.
And there's actually a fascinating cognitive layer to those chaotic brushstrokes, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when the human eye tracks erratic, jagged, overlapping lines, our brains attempt to make sense of the pattern. Because there isn't one, it induces a mild cognitive load. It's sort of visual friction.
Like our brain is trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution.
Exactly. And our motor cortex actually fires as if we were physically making those frantic movements.
Wait, really? That's crazy to think about.
It is. So the artist isn't merely illustrating chaos. He is using technique to force your nervous system to momentarily experience it.
Okay, that explains why glancing down at the bottom of the canvas actually raises your heart rate a little bit, whereas looking back up at the serene face lowers it. The artist is literally playing our nervous system like an instrument.
He really is.
And the way Muchu achieves this brings us to the actual style of the painting. Because the bold, unblended blocks of color on the face, the aggressive, thick strokes at the bottom, it's a deeply modern technique applied to a very ancient subject.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the fusion of these two elements, the ancient theology and the modern execution, is where the real genius lies.
Okay.
Because we are looking at deeply traditional elements, the Devi, the mythology of Shakti, the spiritual geometry of the Bindi. These have been depicted in Orthodox Indian art for centuries.
And typically those classical depictions are, hypersymmetrical. They're placid, highly detailed, and deeply concerned with physical perfection and realism.
Almost to the point of feeling statuesque.
Right, or emotionally distant.
But here, the artist completely discards that classical realism and adopts the raw vocabulary of modern expressionism.
Which is all about emotion, right?
Exactly. Expressionism is a movement fundamentally designed to prioritize inner emotional reality over outward physical accuracy. It deliberately distorts form and utilizes bold, non-naturalistic colors to bypass the intellect and strike directly at our psychological state.
So instead of painting what the Devi historically looks like in, say, a stone temple carving, the artist is painting what the cosmic tension of the Devi feels like in the human psyche.
Yes, which is a vital translation for a contemporary audience.
So what does this all mean for you, the viewer, today?
Well, it demonstrates that traditional spirituality is not some artifact meant to be tracked behind glass in a museum. By utilizing a modern, expressionistic language, the artist pulls these ancient archetypes out of antiquity and places them squarely into the modern psychological landscape.
It makes the divine intensely accessible. I mean, think about a modern viewer, someone who is intimately familiar with anxiety, with a fast-paced, erratic, fragmented reality.
Here's to most of us.
Yeah. They might look at a hyper-realistic classical painting and appreciate the skill, but feel entirely disconnected from it. It just feels like looking at history. But when they look at those chaotic, jagged brushstrokes at the bottom of this canvas, they recognize their own lives.
They see their own internal fragmentation mirrored back at them. The genius of using expressionism for a traditional deity is that it acknowledges the messiness of the modern human condition.
It validates the storm.
It does. And then, by drawing the eye up to that stark white line of consciousness, it offers a tangible map for navigating it. It suggests that the ancient capacity for deep serenity is available right now amidst the static electricity of modern life.
It truly acts as a mirror. We started this deep dive exploring the sensation of an artwork reading your mind, and honestly, the mechanics of this piece explain exactly how it achieves that.
Yeah, it pulls you in.
It really does. It pulls you into a physical experience of infinite space and burning energy. It tangles you in visual chaos, and then it offers you a structural anchor. It is a map of the human psyche disguised as a portrait of a goddess.
It is a remarkable synthesis.
Looking back over the visual terrain we've covered today, the sheer intentionality behind every brushstroke becomes so clear. We navigated the deliberate cognitive friction created by placing the deep, cool void of cosmic infinity directly against the advancing dynamic red fire of Shakti.
Mhm.
We examine the structural necessity of that unblended white line, the keystone of consciousness, locking the spiritual vision of the bindi and the actionable energy of the nose ring together.
Right.
And we moved through the psychological mirroring of the chaotic energy lines at the base, discovering that authentic peace is anchored within the storm rather than in opposition to it.
And we unpacked how merging ancient spiritual motifs with modern expressionist distortion makes all of these concepts viscerally immediate for the contemporary mind.
It leaves you with a lot to process, both visually and internally.
It does. And as we close this exploration, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
Oh, please do.
We spent a significant amount of time examining that stark white line, the spiritual anchor and central path of consciousness that allows the Devi to remain perfectly centered despite the infinite power she holds and the chaotic universe swirling around her.
Right, the keystone.
Exactly. So my question for you is this. What does that white line look like in your own life? What is the specific, rigid personal practice, the core belief or the daily anchor that holds your center when the messy, erratic energy lines of the modern world threaten to pull you apart?
Wow. That is definitely something to think about the next time you feel the storm closing in. Thank you for joining us on this visual deep dive. Keep looking closer.